Cultivation has many levels, and as an individual progresses in their cultivation they gain access to higher realms of existence. The mortal realm is also known as the physical realm. Progression through the mortal realm involves absorbing greater amounts of spiritual energy, qi, into the body. As an individual's spiritual energy increases it becomes denser and changes form. Their cultivation deepens upon a successful change in form. Changes in form are incredibly difficult and often require assistance from medicines, tools, or spiritual pills. In order to truly grasp what cultivation method truly is, one must understand what is spiritual energy, qi, and how can one cultivate it. Whether human or beast without spiritual roots cultivating will only be a dream. Spiritual roots allow a mortal to absorb spiritual qi and to become an immortal cultivator. Many cultivators investigated and realized that spiritual roots were usually passed on through bloodline. For example, if a man or a woman possessed spiritual roots, the children they birthed would have a 25% chance of being born with spiritual roots. And naturally, if both the mother and the father were possessors of spiritual roots, the children they birthed to have a higher probability of inheriting spiritual roots. Cultivators absorb omnipresent energy in their environment through spiritual roots, like a tree's roots absorbing nutrients from the ground. An individual without spiritual roots is unable to cultivate. All cultivators possess one or more spiritual roots. Spiritual roots are categorized into 5 categories: 1. Metal, 2. Wood, 3. Water, 4. Fire, and 5. Earth. Roots absorb attributed energy corresponding with its category. As an example, a wood-attributed root can absorb wood-attributed spiritual energy. Spiritual roots with only one attribute are known as heavenly spiritual roots. A spiritual root that only requires a cultivator to absorb a single type of energy to progress. Heavenly roots are useful in worlds and realms with thinner concentration of energy because the roots shorten the amount of time and energy required to progress in cultivation. Spiritual roots of 2 to 3 attributes are known as true spiritual roots. Spiritual roots that requires a cultivator to absorb 2 to 3 types of energy to progress. True roots are generally well-rounded, able to cultivate in most worlds and realms regardless of the concentration of energy. Spiritual roots with a mixture of 4 or 5 attributes are known as false spiritual roots. A name given by inhabitants of lower realms to spiritual roots that require a cultivator to absorb 4 to 5 types of energy to progress. Possessors of false roots have immense difficulty cultivating in realms with low concentrations of energy. Spiritual roots that don't belong to any of the 5 attributes are known as mutated spiritual roots. Spiritual roots that are formed through combination of 2 or more basic roots. For individuals who possess mutated spiritual roots, although they will still meet a bottleneck when attempting to step into core formation, their cultivation speed is roughly equal to those with heavenly spiritual roots. 0. Mortal. A mortal is an individual that has not begun tempering themselves. A mortal is described as an individual that is born with or without spiritual roots. Once those with spiritual roots begins to temper and cultivate using their spiritual roots, the distinction between both changes. A mortal in the mortal realm without spirit roots use martial arts to gain strength such as basic fighting arts etc. The Endless Sky Beast told Hanli that the Vajra arts are used by mortals in the spirit realm to gain incredible power by refinement of their bodies using spiritual energy in the environment. Once cultivated, their lifespan will not increase unless external medicine is used, which is no more than 200 years, but they gain the ability to compete with demonic beast all the way at the 8th grade depending on how many layer they are able to cultivate. However, keep in mind Vajra arts is an external body refinement arts and do not leverage inner energies via spirit roots required to temper the body to begin cultivation. 1. Qi condensation. In this stage, mortals begin their journey on the path of immortality by condensing and circulating strands of heaven and earth qi, in turn refining it, and making it a part of their power stored in their dantian. Together these strands condense into loose clouds of qi. Because cultivators of this realm have the same lifespan as ordinary mortals, they are not considered to yet be true cultivators. Although they are still oftentimes acknowledged by ordinary mortals as immortal cultivators, as they are able to use a few low-level magical techniques. Cultivators enter the chi condensation stage when they successfully begin absorbing strands of spiritual energy into their dantians. These strands condense into loose clouds of spiritual energy. Mortals enter the cultivation world when they enter this stage. Unfortunately, entering this stage does not grant any increase to the lifespan of a cultivator. As a result, chi condensation cultivators are looked down upon as being stronger mortals. Since chi condensation cultivators are able to collect and store small amounts of spiritual energy, they are able to use low-level magical abilities, tools and treasures. There are 13 stages of chi condensation. Each incremental stage is achieved through increased absorption of spiritual energy. Chi condensation cultivator refine their mortal bodies as they progress through the 13 stages. In general, chi condensation cultivators of a higher grade have the ability to consume more spiritual energy, allowing them to use increasingly powerful artifacts. In the mortal world, chi condensation cultivators are typically treated as low-level disciples if they are nearing the end of their lifespan. Young chi condensation cultivators are groomed by the sect to ensure continued prosperity. 2. Foundation establishment. In this stage, the original mortal lifespan is doubled, and in turn, their chi condenses from a cloud into a liquid. Although few are able to cultivate from chi condensation into foundation establishment by just absorbing and condensing the heaven and earth chi, the vast majority of the cultivation world rely on the foundation establishment pill. The pill is rather scarce, and thus few cultivators progress to this level without a backing from a major power. With the increased chi concentration, the cultivators are able to use their innate fire to aid in refining medicines or tools. Skills, cultivation arts, and other miscellaneous magical treasures become easier to use, and the wielder is able to extract greater magical power from said treasures. Upon successfully collecting and condensing spiritual energy into a liquid, an individual enters the foundation establishment stage of cultivation. At this stage, individuals have greater power that further enhances their magic abilities. Skills, cultivation arts, and tools that were difficult to use at chi refinement become easier to use. Within the foundation establishment level there is a wide variance in power divided into 3 groups: early, middle, and late. A late foundation establishment cultivator has power that dwarfs a middle foundation establishment cultivator. The same applies between middle and early cultivators within this stage. As such, individuals within this stage take great care when interacting with peers at this stage. Progression through foundation establishment involves absorbing spiritual energy at increasingly greater rates. Divided into 4 substages, which are early, mid, late foundation establishment and false core stage. 3. Core formation. In this stage, cultivators have to condense their liquid chi sphere in their dantian into a solid core. Upon success, their lifespans are increased by hundreds of years, up to 500 years at the late stages of core formation. Cultivators of this stage can also refine magical treasures using their core fire. By entering this cultivation stage, most cultivators can enter as high-level disciples or even elders, depending on the size of a sect. If not, most can travel freely throughout the world as vagrant cultivators with relative ease. The bodies of core formation cultivators are also strengthened as marrows are washed and cleaned of impurities. An individual enters the core formation stage when they collect and further condense their spiritual energy into a solid core, often depicted as an orb. At this stage, individuals increase the lifespan of their mortal bodies by hundreds of years, and have greater power that dwarfs late foundation establishment cultivators. The magic battle between the core formation cultivators of Saber Transformation Dock and the controlling spirit sect had shattered the heavens and earth and swept back and forth over several kilometers. Cultivators at this stage are considered elders within middle-level sects, and are often used as a measurement of strength between sects. Loss of a sect's core formation cultivator represents a major loss in a sect's strength. Within the core formation level there is again 3 groups: early, middle, and late core formation cultivators. The difference between the three groups is larger, with a late core formation cultivator being able to effortlessly kill many early and middle core formation cultivators. Progression through core formation involves absorbing even greater amounts of spiritual energy and making their core even denser. The power of the core and the way strength is gauged in this stage changes over time. The entire process of entering the stage usually takes 3 to 5 years. Afterwards, you need a place with spiritual energy to cultivate in solitude. During this period, it's best to prevent any dramatic shifts in mood. Most importantly, battles must be avoided, and they must absorb a certain amount of spiritual energy from their surroundings. Aside from abnormal cultivators with heavenly spiritual roots, everyone else requires spiritual medicine to break through their bottleneck. The snow spirit's water and the heavenly fire liquid are two kinds of medicine that must be ingested during the process. However, making them often requires several kinds of spiritual herbs. Also, historical records mention over a dozen medicines that can increase the success rate. Thus, ordinary cultivators can usually only make 2 at most. 4. Nascent soul. In this stage, cultivators reform their collapsed core into a nascent soul, yuan-ing, hence the name for this stage. By undergoing this transformation, the cultivators have to pass a heart demon tribulation that tests their mettle and resolve. If one fails the tribulation, the nascent soul scatters, as does one's mind or soul. Lucky ones live on as mad lunatics, while the unfortunate ones die. However, upon successfully condensing the nascent soul, one's lifespan dramatically increases, and proportionally, the magical power and the strength of the physical body. Most cultivators of this stage are either renowned grand elders of sects, or a Tao reserve of a sect. These cultivators rarely involve themselves in trivial sect affairs, and most immerse themselves into further cultivation or adventures. Very few vagrant nascent soul cultivators exist, as most powers attempt to rope in such powerful figures with equally powerful incentives. During wars or skirmishes, battles between nascent soul cultivators are rarely deadly, as most who arrive at this stage are very self-motivated and would rather flee than have a battle to the death. One of the more powerful abilities of nascent soul cultivators is the ability to escape death should their physical body perish. Not only is the nascent soul fast and nimble, it can enter another suitable body, should the original host one perish. Normally this is limited to a single time. At the nascent soul stage, cultivating in another body will slow progression. While the nascent soul can survive without a body, cultivators are unable to progress until they acquire another mortal body. Once a core has reached sufficient density, it can be forcefully collapsed and molded to form a nascent soul. A cultivator reaches the nascent soul stage upon successful formation of a nascent soul. Under rare circumstances, an individual may form more than one nascent soul. Progression through the nascent soul stage involves absorbing spiritual energy to refine the nascent soul. Like the previous stages, there are 3 groups: early, middle and late nascent soul cultivators. There is the exception of those one step into nascent soul who may be able to release a power roughly around that of a nascent soul cultivator. One ability of this stage is to separate nascent soul from a cultivator's mortal body. As a nascent soul is refined, it reduces its dependency on the mortal body. In later stages of nascent soul, the mortal body can be destroyed while the cultivator survives through their nascent soul. However, destruction of the mortal body, cultivation vessel, prevents further growth. It is possible to possess another body should it be given to them or they forcefully take over a new body. However, doing so will weaken the nascent soul, and future growth is still limited. Cultivators at this stage are considered ancestors or grand elders within sects, and can live up to 2,000 years at most, more should they use special methods. Nascent soul cultivators form the basis and majority of strength within a middle-level sect. Loss of nascent soul ancestors can result in extinction of a sect. A single ancestor can single-handedly wipe out an enemy sect without a nascent soul ancestor. War between sects or factions with nascent soul cultivators rarely result in battle between cultivators of this stage. Nascent soul cultivators are mostly motivated by self-interest. They will not involve themselves in conflict unless there are rewards. Although some cheat their way into the nascent soul cultivation level by merging and assimilating a spirit nascent while in their core formation cultivation, they are essentially stuck in the early nascent soul stage. Furthermore, their magical power is slightly weaker, as is their spiritual sense. The original lifespan constriction of a maximum of 600 years for core formation cultivators remains as well. As such, while theoretically one can become a force above all core formation cultivators, it comes at a great cost as failure rates are high and material costs to raise spirit nascent hosts and finding compatible cultivators are astronomical. They can possess bodies using their nascent soul. Also, instantaneous movement, like teleportation, is also possible. 5. Deity transformation. In this stage, cultivators use their nascent soul to interact with the spiritual principles of the world. In the lower, mortal, realms, the spiritual energies of the world are too scarce, thus very few people progress in their cultivation. Most of the lower realm cultivators attempt to ascend to the spiritual world in order to contact higher spiritual energies and further their cultivation. In lower realms, deity transformation cultivators reign supreme, and cultivators descending from the spiritual world must lower their cultivation base to this stage, or face a heaven and earth spiritual chi backlash and die. In the spiritual world, many ascending cultivators are picked up by major powers as they need a dust-wiping pill to wash off the lower realm residual chi, and only the major powers have them in stock. This is useful, because without wiping away this residual chi, during every heavenly tribulation there will be an extra +1 layer, thus making it increasingly harder to transcend it. Divided into 4 sub-stages. Early initial stage upon reaching deity transformation. Typically, cultivators can effortlessly dispatch late nascent soul cultivators. This stage is also known as a 4th-tier upper race being on the Thunder continent in the spirit realm. Middle achieved when the spiritual energy previously collected by a cultivator's nascent soul and the cultivator's physical body is purified using the world origin energy. Cultivators at this stage can typically dispatch early-stage deity transformation cultivators with ease. This stage is also known as a 5th-tier upper race being on the Thunder continent in the spirit realm. Late achieved when the spiritual energy collected by a cultivator's nascent soul reaches a concentration where their nascent soul becomes truly solid. At this stage a cultivator can ascend from the lower realms to middle realms such as the spirit realm without having to worry about the celestial winds and spatial storms that separate the realms. This stage is also known as a 6th-tier upper race being on the Thunder continent in the spirit realm. Peak achieved after further strengthening the nascent soul through collection of immense amounts of purified spiritual energy. They have mainly 3 gained abilities. Cultivators draw upon world origin energy to manipulate space within the world to travel vast distances with a single step. This is called space manipulation. Cultivators can forcefully prevent all spiritual energy from leaking their bodies, making them impossible to detect for any cultivator with a spiritual sense at the same level. Cultivators hide themselves using the world origin energy to manipulate space to temporarily phase their nascent soul out of the dimension. This is called phasing nascent soul. These are the cultivation levels present in a lower realm which I wanted to cover as part of this video. We'll be uploading the rest of the parts soon. Like, subscribe and support for more videos. Thank you.